Welcome to another exercise in this workbook. This time we're going to focus on probability theory with this exercise. Let's have a look at this. Here we have a travel agent services 3 regions: Europe, the Far East and South America. The customers are distributed as follows: 41%, 32% and 27% according to the 3 regions. Additionally, we know 72% of the Euro customers book as well a second vacation with the agent. For the Far East customers, this quota is 56%, and for the South American customers, it's 81%. That's just the background information. Our first task: calculate the probability that a random customer books more than one vacation with the travel agent. Second one then: you meet a customer that booked only one vacation. What is the probability that the customer has been to South America before? Finally, in 2018, the travel agent serviced 4,000 customers. How many customers have been in Europe or the Far East? With the additional information, the share of those customers that have visited both regions is 3%. So we're talking here about being in Europe or the Far East or in both of them. Well, let's work through the 3 parts step by step. First, what we want in the first part, we want to know how many of the customers did more than one trip. So I'm going to shorten this here to MT for more than one trip, and we want the probability of this actually occurring. What do we know? Well, we have this information from the informational first paragraph. We know the shares and we know more or less the conditional probabilities conditioned on where they have been before. Well, if we take a closer look, what we actually want to have is the unconditioned probability. So here we have the conditions, and now we want to have the unconditioned probability. Whenever we have a case like this, and we also have the probabilities for the conditions, which is the left side here, what we can use is the theorem for total probability. So that's what we're going to use here. And this will look like this. Well, what is this? Well, it's nothing else than simply multiplying condition, probability of actually being a Euro trip, with, under the assumption that it has been a Euro trip, under the condition it has been a Euro trip, how likely is it that the customer will book more than one trip? So that's the first part. Then we do this for the second part, for the Far East and for South America. And we're doing this pairwise for all of them. So if we take a closer look, by inserting the values, we get exactly this. So it's more or less nothing else than a weight average, with these values being the weights and those being the probabilities. So it's a weighted average of the conditional probabilities. That's what total probability is all about. Well, if we do this, if we insert those numbers into the calculator, we get a result of 0.6931 or 69.631%, which then is the probability that one of the customers, a random customer that is, will book more than one trip. And that's already part 1. So let's continue with the second part. Here in the second part, what we want to have is, under the condition that he does not book more than one flight or trip, what's the probability that he was in South America? Well, what do we know? We know the probability that he's been in South America. And, well, if we use the result from A, we not only know the probability that he books more than one trip, we also know the probability that he only books one trip, which is just the complement of the other probability. So in other words, we get this complement here by simply going 1 minus the probability of booking more than one trip. So 1 minus the result from A. And what we also can deduce is this conditional probability. Under the condition that he's been to South America, what is the probability that he only books one trip? Well, we do not have this exactly, but we have the probability that he books more than one trip if he's been to South America. That's the 0.81, the 81%. So if we simply go 1 minus, that's the other possibility. Well, 81% that he books more than one trip, 19% that he only books one trip. If we have this, well, if we look closely, what we actually want to determine here is simply switching condition and what we are asking about. In this case, whenever we see something like this is a good indicator that we have to work with the theorem of Bayes. And that's what we're going to use here as well. Theorem of Bayes in this version. So we take that probability here, that conditional probability, multiply it with the probability of whatever is the condition here. That's this part. We have this from the exercise text. And we divide this by what we ask for as a probability, as a condition here in this part, or as a probability in that part, which here is the probability of not booking more than one trip. If you look closely, you see a kind of a structure here. The first exercise was on total probability. The second one then focusing on the theorem of Bayes. That's actually a pretty good idea to structure exercises, because usually you're looking for this value first and then you can actually use theorem of Bayes. Well, here we have all these three values as argued above, so we can simply insert them, giving us a result of 0.1672 or 16.72%. So under the assumption that he only booked one trip, what's the chance that he's been in South America? The chance is 16.72%. That's the second part, so let's carry on with the third and final part. In C, what we are actually looking for is how many people have been to Europe or the Far East, or to both of them. How many of the 4,000 who've traveled with the agency. What do we know? Well, we know the probability that someone's been to Europe, and we know the probability that someone's been to the Far East. That's from the original text. But we also got the additional information. The probability that someone's been to both of the locations is 3%. And if we have these three values, we're looking here for the probability of union. So what we can use for this is the addition theorem. The addition theorem looks like this. We're going to add these two probabilities. So here, Euro or Far East, going to add probability of Euro and probability of Far East. But we have to subtract once the probability that he's been to Europe and the Far East. So we have to adjust this for this part here. Well, we have all these values from the text, so we can insert them, giving us a final result of 0.7 or 70%. Well, 70% of the 4,000. So we know 70% of all the customers have been to Europe or the Far East, or to both of them. So we multiply the 4,000 with the 70%, giving us a total of 2,800 customers. So 2,800 customers have been to Eurozone, Europe, to the Far East, or to both of them. Well, that's then everything there is for part C, thereby also concluding the whole exercise. I hope you enjoyed this so far. I say goodbye and see you next time.